Is this the signal?
Yes.
You need to kind of,
The universal signal.
The universal thing.
Should do the countdown, right?
Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to Boost Biz Ed Oregon, and we're glad to have you here. Our cameraman is still working on some things, but that's okay. So we appreciate you spending your time with us. We hope that you will get something out of this that you can take with you and use for your business and go forward with. So today we have to thank LoanStar Lending for providing us with this lovely conference room. And if Drew would like, you could show the view out the window. It's really not bad. Yeah, don't make people too seasick, but that is the Willamette River, so pretty lovely. So hopefully we will be able to pay attention to Mr. Bill Ford, who is our speaker, and I will introduce a little bit further in a few moments. Also, I'm your MC. My name is Brett Carpenter. We have Drew Shockley, who is the originator of all of this. And one of our other allies, D. Scott Smith, is not here at the moment. But so anyway, so what is this? We call it positively actionable education. We want to put something out there that anybody could take and apply in their business, hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. It's getting late in the afternoon for us today. This has been going on for about 8 years. Drew started this back in Denver. And now we have Denver. We have a couple places up in the Denver area. 3, actually.
3 in Denver, yeah.
3 now in Denver. And we have Corvallis, Albany, and then we also have San Diego, California going. So this is becoming much more of a network, much more of a number of things that hopefully, regionally and growing all over the country in the long run. So if you haven't logged in, I think everybody's at least checked in, so they were here. If there's anybody out there in Facebook land that wants to check in, we'd love to hear from you. And so what we usually like to do is also have you guys introduce yourselves, because you bring value. You are spending your time with us, and so we'd love to know who you are, kind of what you do, what value do you bring, and why are you investing a little time with us today? So let's start with you.
Yeah, my name is Ning Zhang, and my company is DH Renewables. I've done a number of things, doing some consulting, and also now doing import-export with China on renewable energy projects. And I'm a good friend of Bill. And, so I always enjoy listening to him, formally and informally. So I hope to learn some more from him.
Well, thank you.
Cheryl Williams. I'm here for Forget-Me-Not Floral and Design, and I'm here because I need a lot of education and a lot of help, and I'm willing to get it.
Hi, I am Alex Johnson, owner of True Life Financial Solutions. We are a senior-focused insurance agency that caters to seniors and other folks, but seniors is our focus, making sure they understand how Medicare works and how it'll affect them going forward. And we're just here to serve.
Hi, I'm Kimberly McCord. I'm a registered nurse, and I opened my own acupressure business called Bubbling Springs Acupressure. And literally my theme is to care for the caregiver. So I provide workshops to reduce burnout to caregivers and their long-term facilities, and also I give private sessions.
I am Kathy Wilkins. I am an HR consultant locally, and I am a person who is always interested in learning how to be a better leader. So that's pretty much why I'm here.
I'm Liz Irish. I'm the branch manager here at LoanStar, and I do home loans, residential lending, and I'm here to learn how to be a better leader as well.
I'm Jeff Horton. I'm the new director at Next Level Media in Corvallis. It's been a media video company, but we're going to be expanding it into a full consultancy, full service agency that will provide services to startups that are funded, as well as local businesses with a focus on small and medium-sized business.
I'm Scott Weaver, and I have 2 hats. I have my own company called Arise 2 that does management consulting. So I know how to run companies, and I help owners and founders run their companies. And my other hat is the Business Enterprise Center, which is teamed up with Drew to help get the Boost Biz Ed going. And So that part, I'm here on official business and unofficial business, so I'll have to get my 2 hats on.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
I'll hand you that to you. Hi, I'm Drew Shockley with the Call to Action Alliance.
You're doing your
and
life, you know.
Biz Ed as well. So those are the 2 hats that I wear. So I'm excited to be here. Always could use some tips on leadership. So I'm excited. Seamlessly spin.
Seamlessly.
Well,
Looking at you. There we go. All right. Well, I mentioned I'm Brett Carpenter, and I teach entrepreneurship at Oregon State, and I also work with the Small Business Development Center and helping them develop programs and educational programming. So really out there trying to support either young people trying to start up businesses or the general community, and that's what I've had a passion for years. And so I'm kind of got it all going on now for what I really want to do. It's pretty nice. So without further ado, we want to introduce our speaker. So Bill Ford is a retired U.S. Marine Corps. And Bill, you were in there 24 years?
24 years.
24 years. Man, well, thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. And so Bill is really been one of, I think, has studied leadership for forever. You certainly do in your position of the Marine Corps. Well, you were in leadership positions and you have a wealth of experience. So bringing that together, and then you served with 5 Medal of Honor winners and both a former Commandant of the Marine Corps and the Command Sergeant Major. So after retirement, you did 16 years in the electronics industry. Where did you work?
Worked over at White's Electronics in Sweet Home, Oregon.
Oh,
Kennedy
very nice.
White's company.
Very nice. Well, Bill, I think, has some really great insights on leadership, and let's just welcome Bill.
Woohoo!
Presentation going properly. And why did the screen go off?
That's what always happens.
We'll figure it out.
Our apologies. Temporary connection issue. Administrators have been contacted. Please return shortly. What? That is really pretty fascinating. So let me, yeah, of course.
I'll talk through the first line. It's
Yeah,
not really
give me a second.
very exciting. It's a picture of me all dressed up. I wanted to show everybody here how cleaned up I can actually get. That shows on the slide so you know who is speaking to you. And I'll spend quite a bit of time today talking about myself, which to me is an important story. Hopefully from that important story, you'll feel it's important and you'll incorporate some of those thoughts into your own role. We have any other veterans here? Anybody served? There we got a veteran. Thank you very much for your service. Branch of service?
United States Navy.
Navy, there we go, our senior sister service. I'd like to escort those Marines around. Most of the time you didn't have to push us off the boats. We kind of got off there on our own. Yeah.
So there you go.
So a lot of this today will depend upon your perspective. And to illustrate that, I brought this nice bottle. My wife screamed at me as I ran out the door, "Where are you going with that?" And I said, "It's my attention here." I'll ask you the question, first test question of the day. Is the bottle half full or is the bottle half empty? And does it make what?
Half full.
Half full.
Half full. Half full.
Is there a right answer?
It's not full.
But it's not empty.
It's not empty
It's
either.
And I don't know. I do know it contains water and not nitroglycerin. I don't know if that would change your perspective if this were something that was volatile and a bomb. If it were gin, it might be the mixing of a party or something like that. But it does depend a lot on your perspective. And as the Associate Director for the Marine Corps Engineering Association for the states of Washington and Oregon, I still remain connected to the Marine Corps very closely. While my career was 24 years, 4 of those years were spent in college. I found Oregon State University here in 1961. I came here without any understanding of what I was going to major in, but I already listed in the Marine Corps, so I know my path for at least the next 4 or 5 years after college was set. Really kind of tumultuous times, those 60s. The United States had engaged itself in a war that was very controversial. A lot of turmoil, a lot of things were going on, a lot of protest songs, My wife said, if you go over and talk leadership to them, they will be asleep within the first 3 minutes. You're going to have to learn to dance between now and then, and you're going to have to learn to sing. And so as I see your eyes starting to droop off or anything, and you hear me break into song, it might bring you back to life. The Marine Corps I joined was quite different in 1961. The recruiting slogan was pure male. The Marine Corps will build men in body, in mind, and in spirit. That's all I needed to hear. I barely weighed 130 pounds. I was 5'7".
There's a chair out there you can roll in.
We're having a real cultural experience. He's from Brazil. I don't know.
Oh.
And so here I am, 5'7", seeing myself, if I joined the Marine Corps, at least 6'4" by the time I got out. I want you to know, as you looked at it, they failed. Mine, I thought I'd be as smart as Einstein, surely. You know, I had something to train. If I went in the Marine Corps, and everything they had, their history and everything, I'd be really bright, really smart guy. And I'll let you decide after this short meeting with me if they made any improvements. In spirit, I saw myself kind of like the Dalai Lama. You know, I was going to have this nice spirit about me, and I was at peace with the world, and all the rest of that stuff. And it really didn't turn out for me quite like that. But that was my start. My premise is that leaders are made, and they are not born. Now, if you weren't born, they wouldn't have anything to work with to turn you into a leader, so I'm overstating that case a little bit. But after you hear my background, what I went through as a young man from the age of 0 to 17, there was nothing in that scenario particularly that made me a leader or qualified to lead people. I was born in Winnemucca, Nevada. Don't know if anybody from Nevada here? All right, Nevada. Boise, Idaho, Reno, Nevada. Those are two places you probably, Highway 95 goes right down through the Oregon desert. You go through and cross over from Oregon into Nevada in a little town called McDermitt. It's on the map here, it's on the slide. Born in Winnemucca, family moved north 74 miles to the border. And when we moved into town, we were 4 more family members. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was a meat cutter, a butcher, and he'd worked in Winnemucca, got enough money to buy a lease in a store, moved that business up to Winnemucca and took a lease in that store. Interesting town to me in that we were one of 3 non-Basque families. Anybody here Basque or know about the Basque? All right, think Spain, think France, see the Pyramids Mountains. There is a Basque culture up there. It's not well studied and well identified from an anthropological standpoint, even though we've been looking at it a long time. Primarily sheep herders, sheep growers. And they settled in this little town, and when we moved in with those 63 other people, we were one of 3 non-Basque families. Everybody else was related. It was a clan. And there were about 20 kids. We had 2 elementary schools, both one-room schoolhouses. There were maybe 16 kids on one side going to the Nevada school. I had grade school reunions with 100% in attendance because I was drafted as a 5-year-old because Billy's smart. Billy can say his ABCs. He can count to 100. Even though his birthday isn't until December, let's start him with Leon. So Leon and I became best friends and are still best friends today. He's still running around someplace out there. And we would go back and get Herman, our first grade teacher, and we'd have 100% in attendance, including the teacher, until Herman passed away. So you can see with that type of a start, there wasn't a lot of fantastic educational opportunities, but it was broadening to me because 7 miles from town we had a very large quicksilver mine. And so there was a mine population, and they had their own school, and they had a culture, and the miners were out in town. We also had a Paiute Shoshone Indian reservation 5 miles out of town. And so we had the reservation, and they had their own school. So in this little town, population 67 in town, we had 5 schools. We had 5 bars, necessary thing to lubricate the miners and natives, and us, and everybody else. And we had 3 gas stations, 1 cafe, and my father's general store. I lived there from the age of 5 to the age of 10. 10, I moved to Ontario, Oregon, another border town right on the Oregon-Idaho boundary line. A little larger town, population 3,500 when I moved to town. And I went from the 6th grade through high school. My sister, 4 years older, found Oregon State University, came here. I was her first round draft choice because Billy was going to get in trouble unless he came to Oregon State University and stayed under the thumb of his sister. And so that's how I came to Corvallis and just absolutely loved it here. When I was 17, I graduated from high school and I joined the Marine Corps under that slogan, the Marine Corps builds men in body, mind, and spirit. And I got into an organization immediately that started holding me accountable for all kinds of different standards. And it was a clean system. It was a fair system. As a junior enlisted man, we were evaluated with proficiency marks and conduct marks. And basically the scale was 4.0 to 5.0. Nobody got a 5.0. Very seldom would you ever see a 4.9 or a 4.8. Rarely would you see much less than a 4.0. So if you were doing your job basically as a junior enlisted man, and you got these marks every time you transferred, every time they sent a new leader over you, you were evaluated. You also were evaluated with your technical skills. They taught us all how to shoot, and they gave you badges. If you qualified at a lower level, it was marksman. If you qualified a little higher, and it was all on your uniform. Everybody, as you walked down the street, they saw what you shot, or they saw your ribbons and badges. They saw your fruit salad. A very clean, honest, transparent, open system that I think industry could really use today. So there was my start, and I've now moved you through 2 of the 10 slides. Now, unlike most leaders, I'm very inclusive and also very thankful that we have 4 ladies who've shown up to this talk. So I put 2 acronyms up here, and the surface is full of acronyms. The Navy worse than the Marine Corps. I'm sure you can throw out a couple of those acronyms. ComNav Force Marianas, and stuff like that.
Yeah, ComDes Group, yeah.
Yeah, all those kinds of things. And sometimes acronyms are helpful in helping the military type people learn what it is they're trying to learn. And you're going to learn one today. You won't remember it. I don't expect you to. I'll give you a handout and a sheet, and you can take it home with you. But it's JJ did tie buckle, and those are the 14 leadership traits. And so if you take a look at these and pay attention to them, you might remember that JJ did tie buckle. And that's a non-sexist term. JJ might be Joyce and Janet, could be Jay and Jason, I don't know. But my first 2 words up there are him and her, because it's all about people. It's all about resources that you have to accomplish whatever task that you're involved with. And him is what I learned. And I just thought that that was just not inclusive enough for today. So I gave it him and her. And him stands for the qualities of human understanding, intellect, and moral character. And then to make up something for her, and you could choose whatever words that you want. And what you'll know about this presentation, I don't have all the words in the bag. These are not the only leadership traits. These are not the only leadership principles. But it's an awful good start as a reminder to help you as you go through your workday of traits and principles that you should bring as a manager and as a leader. And I hope it'll help you as you develop these skills. But for the H, I thought that probably a sense of humor would be helpful. I have tried to be funny my entire life. I was not called when Jay Leno left the stage. I was not called when David Letterman left the stage. But I've always enjoyed humor and have used humor a lot to defuse situations. If you can smile, it's a start. If you can use pacifying talk, it might get you a little further. If you use reason and understanding and lay the facts out and you're still having problems, The best thing would be to do is to toughen up mentally. Accept the position that they have, agree to disagree, and walk away from it. You cannot cure everybody's behavior and attitude, even though sometimes you'd like to. The E, empathy. I think empathy is something that we really need a lot in our roles today. It's really, really tough out there, folks. If you have a job, hanging on to it, just getting to work with the prices, the way things are today. And there are a lot of folks that do have flat tires on the way to work, and he's late or she's late. But empathize with them. Try to figure out, listen to the situation that is being described to you. And then R, I give it respect. You could give it responsibility. But that's the her in the new leadership style. And of course the goal is to control that group, manage that group, get them to do what you want them to do without yelling and screaming and telling because I said so. Because this is the way it's got to be done. And out of the 60s, we saw tremendous, tremendous changes in the service. We were struggling with what we called contemporary problems. Drugs out of control. Man, we had big drug problems coming out of Vietnam. There was a breakdown in leadership. Race relations. You know, we had black and white problems that we'd never experienced before because basically the officer corps was white. Black Marines had no role models. Frank Peterson was our first general officer aviator in the Marine. And once we saw those types of things, they sent a lot of us to leadership instructors course. And we put together a new leadership role and a new leadership model. And it was there as a carpool buddy in a 12-person seminar led by a black Marine captain facilitator that I got to meet and know my first Congressional Law of Honor winner, J.J. McGinty. 12 people, I don't know, it's about the size of this class. Each of us introduced ourselves. We're all wearing our ribbons and badges, so we all knew what rank we were and what we'd done in war and peace. And here's a man with a glass eye sitting across from me. I'd never seen him before in my life, wearing a ribbon for the Congressional Medal of Honor. And he introduced himself, and he didn't say one word about his. So the facilitator says, Captain McGinney, the class would be remiss if you didn't tell them why and how you won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Without batting an eye, you only had one. That's supposed to be a joke. I didn't mean it. He pointed, he said, oh, you mean the Blue Max? I'd never heard anybody so casual about Congressional Medal of Honor. He said, well, I'll tell you the story. And so he proceeded to tell me the story. And we went to school for about 12 weeks learning this new leadership model they were trying to introduce into the Marine Corps. He became a friend, and he was the first one that I bet and that I'd worked with. The second one was a wonderful lieutenant colonel. I was still a captain. I was a captain a long time. And he had a lot of ribbons. He's a lot older. And I knew he'd been in World War II, and we were right up on a beautiful mountain of Mount Fuji. His name was Jim Day, and Jim was called Hawkeye, nicknames, of course, just like MASH in the olden day. He was our Hawkeye, great sense of humor. And he was wearing 5 Purple Hearts. And so I asked him, I said, Colonel, I said, how'd you get those 5 Purple Hearts? He said, I started early. And I thought, well, that was a pretty good answer. He said, yeah, he said, I was a corporal in the Battle of Okinawa during the Second World War. He said, I got promoted to sergeant. He said, I was a sergeant in Korea. He said, and in Korea I was a machine gunner. And he says, you know what? I found out I couldn't run away from those machine gun bullets. And when I ran, it hit me in the ass. And they used to always call me lead ass. And that's the kind of humility he had. He was just an incredible leader. Went on after he retired as a major general in the Marine Corps. Got out, and President William Jefferson Clinton called him back, and they found his heroic action on the Battle of Okinawa from World War II when he was a corporal, awarded him the Congressional Medal of Honor. So he was the second one. I'll tell you about the other 3 as I get into this here. I got to get these slides done. Now we're going to get into the leadership traits. Okay, think of leadership as a pyramid. the boss at the top. There's something always at the top, there's something always at the bottom. If you lay a good foundation on the bottom, you're going to be in better shape. Your house is not going to crumble. It's like the Three Little Pigs story. I built my house on sand and straw, and a wolf came and blew it down. We built it on a good foundation. So at the top, you've got the mission that you're trying to accomplish, your job description, whatever they give you as a goal for Lone Star, however much you got. That's your mission over here. Military, it's a little cleaner, depending upon the situation, a little better defined. And you've got your human resources. The human resource section must love this. And I've had to change this and include those human resources, because when I learned this, it was men. You have your mission, you got your men. But now I got troops. So I didn't know what to call them, but now I know call human resources. And the big gig here is to stand at the top of that pyramid as a leader and keep those things in balance. Because if you sacrifice your human resources and you're not good to them, and you don't train them, and you don't take care of them, and you don't demonstrate these leadership skills like fairness, we'll get into that a little later, they're not going to work for you. They're not going to be as motivated. You're not going to be as productive. They're not going to delight your customer. All the new language that you younger people have learned that I could almost forget about because I am retired. Okay. Just some of the principles, and I'll pass my first handout here, and I'm only going to give you 2 or 3 of these that I feel are the most important as you work your way down the pyramid, trying to build this foundation of leadership. When I learned I was supposed to know myself, that was pretty easy for me because I was a long-distance runner at University of Oregon, fantastic coach. You may have heard about him, Bill Bowerman, old Nike shoe man himself. And he was a phenomenal coach, but I was running probably 50 to 70 miles every week. Sometimes I'd run 100 miles. This is pre-M3P player, smartphones, Walkmans, everything. So all I had was kind of the thoughts processing in my head. Well, what are you going to do when you get out of college? Oh, you're going to go to Vietnam. Oh, I see how that's going to work out. So a lot of street pounding. So I thought I knew myself pretty well. And I think that that's an important thing for leaders. Until you really settle and understand who you are, what your values package is, what your priorities are, what your goal is, what you're passionate about, how you're going to approach life, it makes it more difficult if you're willy-nilly and not settled. So know yourself. Second one is, I put a T in there for troops, and I guess I put SHR. But know your employees, know who you're working with. And the postdoc sponsorship category over there at Oregon State University, a lot of those folks are struggling, and as you work with them, you'll get to know them just a lot better, and what their strengths and their weaknesses are, and how you can help develop them and find those types of responsibilities in that class. And you have to know and I called it stuff. It used to be a swear word we were allowed to use. The president used it, so I don't know, but he used it in a very, very inappropriate manner to describe countries that I can't even go there. Don't get me started on politics. No. But it was called whatever defecatory material that came out of the low diameter. I call it stuff. You got to know your stuff. And at a basic Marine soldier sailor level, it becomes really, really simple because you're given a little responsibility and you're trained with skill sets. And your skill sets are built and you go up in rank and maturity and you get those things and you know more and more. And maybe even the same as in industry when you hire a first person and it's an entry level, and then hopefully that secretary kind of clerical dude will grow into office manager, and over time he'll go on up and pretty soon they'll be running the whole show. And so those are the 3 dynamics. Know yourself, know your HR, know your troops, and know your stuff. And if you do that, the goal for all of us in the service was to become technically and tactically experts in your field of study. And that is pretty important. And you'll see as I go through these slides that I've been away from PowerPoint, those kind of things for quite a while, and I'm not technically proficient. I can get by, but I'm inadequate as a PowerPoint presenter. I have two nice arrows up here, both of which I had to draw in because I couldn't figure out how to get the arrow straight. And you'll see another one that has one straight arrow and one crooked arrow. So I'm learning. I'm only halfway there within the time that I had to do this pitch. All right, here's the principles of Marine Corps leadership. If you would take one and pass it around, I have just enough if we run out. Scott, you don't get one. I'll give one to you later.
We'll share.
I think there should be enough. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll get. All right, and feel free to interrupt me at any time because anything I say up here cannot be rejuvenated except through the Facebook webcam and all that. And so if you've got questions or comments or anything as I go, please go ahead and I think the principles are pretty straightforward. You'll see on the sheet just kind of good reminders of you of what the principles of leadership are all about. And for me, since I was required to have a takeaway from this, if nothing else, you get 3 sheets of paper. And I think it's a non-reusable staple that I put in there up at the top, so don't try to reuse that. But at least it's a takeaway. All right, next slide. This is my hand-drawn, somebody said that looked like an amoeba. And I said, no, it's a tree. You think of it as a tree. I drew the ground right here across. I labeled it ground. So here's a beautiful tree. Think of a beautiful tree going on here. There's a lot of trees out there. And it's a tree of life. And as you grow and you gain experience, and that tree is everything. And on one side of the tree with a straight arrow is yourself. And that's pretty important. So if you balance this tree of life and decisions about where you're working, who you're working with, military mission, and on the other side is others. And this includes those at work, your social contacts, whether you're a religious person or not, the others are out there and they're influencing you. Now, if you are too self-centered, if you're just, that's it, my way or the highway, I could use some pretty good examples right now. Unforgiving, this is the position I'm taking and this is it. You're going to burn yourself out. You have to include others in your paradigm. Your business that you're operating, your job is to delight your customers. And if you don't take care of their needs, they're not coming back. Competition is so good out there. So you've got to balance that. Well, how do you do that? The Marine Corps acquainted me early on with core values: honor, courage, and commitment. And once I joined, I took that oath of enlistment. I knew where I was going for the next 4 or 5 years. I was, committed to it. I didn't really have a choice. A lot of folks talk to me about Vietnam. My major is anthropology. My area of study is peoples of Southeast Asia. Focus on peoples of Vietnam. I knew where I was going. I knew what I was doing. Did I think the war was immoral? Yes, I did. Did I have a set of orders to go? Yes, I did. It was not a conflict for me because I felt I could go there as a leader of Marines and lead my Marines in a way that was firm, that was fair, and that was sensitive. And unlike a lot of folks that I saw, that I worked with, they didn't take these core values to heart. Now in our society it seems like more is better, bigger is better. So all these traits, all these principles, the perspective I would give you is you need to do more of it. You need to be better at that, constantly seeking self-improvement. You're here today to learn more. Never stop learning, lifelong learning. That's just part of the paradigm that has been created in the world that I grew up in from age 17 on. You don't want to go out to the rifle range and shoot marksmen. Bunches of reason for it. One is the badge looks like a toilet seat. Yep. It's supposed to be a target, but everybody knows you shot a toilet seat, and if you don't have a badge, that's worse. You went unk. and he's sitting back there at the 500-yard line looking down there, and you've been taught to hold him and squeeze him and release the bat. The wind's blowing, the flags are blowing. That's a 500 yards you're supposed to hit this target? You know, what's that about? You pull the trigger. It's where faith comes in. You get good at shooting, and then you walk off the range, and they read your scores to you, and it's, wow, I got a badge for unqualified, no badge. Toilet seat, yeah. Ooh, that's the prettiest badge they make, sharpshooter. Then if you're expert, that's what you're going for, those cross rifles, cross pistols. You gotta have it so you can show the world. That's what I felt it was a clean system. You know, it was a system of rewards and yes, punishments, back to proficiency in conduct markers. But once you get up to a level, you start being evaluated with a very elaborate efficiency report. Officers, how you perform your regular duties. Low end of the scale, unsatisfactory. Highest end of the scale, outstanding. Next category, excellent. Next category, above average. Next category, average. Next category, below average. And then unsatisfactory. And that's performance of regular duties. Then you get performance of additional duties and administrative duties. And then all these traits in here. Well, how's his military bearing? Same scale. And then they write a paragraph, a narrative. Well, Bill is a mild-mannered leader, but he tries his best to lead his troops in a firm, fair, and sensitive manner. If they make any kind of a derogatory comment, he was unable to keep the mess hall clean enough during the last inspection. They have to show that to you, explain why they wrote it on your own. And if you're not, quote, high and right out there, you're not going to get promoted. I'm sorry. Not a lot of coaching plans, but they did try to give us feedback as we went through this process. Every 6 months you got one of these. Every time you were transferred, you got one of these. So a lot of different reporting seniors, and you were required to report on other people. So I thought that system was pretty fair. Then they had distributions of marks. If I'm evaluating 10 people, I put 3 in the outstanding category, 4 in the excellent category, and 2 down here. They could see what we call truth tellers, and then they would go to the promotion boards with those. So the system in the military, in my opinion, is basically pretty darn fair and works probably best for most. Another one of our contemporary problems we had was the role of women in service, less than 1%. To illustrate, I was the officer in charge of Marine recruiting in Portland, Oregon in 1970. My quota, and it was a quota, and they didn't like that word after a while, so I changed it to goal. Let me tell you, it did not make my job any easier or any more difficult, whether I got a goal or a quota. My quota was 100 male Marines a month from the state of Oregon, 5 counties in southwestern Washington. My goal for women, anybody want to guess? You got it. 1.
1.
Now,
Wow.
did I make my quota in women? Yes, ladies, I did. Those dress blues with the blood stripe, you know. I look like Captain America running down the street, you know. I was so young. Yeah, it was good. Always good, even on one. But it was very, very difficult during those times. And so we didn't know how to supervise women. There weren't women role models. Had very, very few women general officers. Now it's quite different. We're up to 8%. Last month, the Marine Corps had the first woman complete the Marine School of Infantry. So we're getting there, but we're getting there really slowly. But it is happening. And I did have the privilege of having the only unit at Camp Hansen, Okinawa, that had the women in it. And what they put up with was just incredible. I mean, it was, I don't see how they did it. I really don't. Okay, so you got your basic trunk of the tree here. It's got your core values: honor, courage, and commitment. But beneath the ground that nobody sees is this intellectual process that they call and describe as reason. You got to reason these things out. Does this make sense? It might make sense to you, but what about my Chinese friend here, Ning? He's got a military background also. He's got a story in over Over 25, 30 years here, we know that story pretty well now because we've shared bread together and meals, and it's taken me a long time. But his language, Chinese, is different. So on these traits, we talked about him coming over, we carpooled over together, just the word justice. What does justice mean in the Chinese culture in that? And how does that language? So you kind of got to think about these. Find the reason. Find the reason that things are happening in your company. If you want to improve it, you got to understand them. And again, keep it balanced. Self, straight arrow. Be a straight arrow. Men, that's a tough call nowadays. Hashtag me too. I can't believe we're here, but yet you've lived with it for generations. You know, it's a male-dominated world. Marine Corps was even worse. Then I couldn't figure out how I got that straight arrow there, so I said, well, I'll just draw my arrow again. And others. And I don't know whether that's because others are so different and dynamic, because I'm not technically proficient on this PowerPoint stuff. I'll take a class. So the reason becomes the tap group that works the entire program. Okay, I talked about the clean system, a couple acronyms. The reason it's clean is because it's organized. You have a table of organization, and the TO is what we call it. The TO tells you exactly what the structure you need to accomplish your mission in the real world in times of peace and in times of war. And so when you join a new unit like LoanStar Loan, you don't have to worry. You can look it up in a book. You could go in there. An engineer company has between 150 and 259 Marines. 16 of those are officers, and 4 of these are these, and these are their skills. We got so many plumbers, we got so many electricians, we got so many bulldoze drivers, we got so many mechanics. It's all set for you. Now, the problem is the budget. That age-old business saying, you know, cash is king. And maybe in the latest case, it's queen. It's something. But cash is important. Well, we don't have enough money. We never do to run the military. Why? Primarily because of basic strategic policies that have come into being that no longer make sense, that are holdover from World War II. We are equipped in this country to fight 2 world wars in 2 non-geographic areas. And we fund that. And your tax dollars are doing good, and my boy Mattis is out there getting more money, and Donald's doing his job, and it's going. So anyway, another story. But it's clean, it's knowledge, it's measurable, and against this TO that you have, the ideal, you have manning levels where you're only up to this much strength. You don't have all your officers, so you have to compensate for that. Somebody has to pick up their jobs. It's like when people go on maternity leave. You hire, or you staff it temporarily, or you just do away with the function. What happens? When people take vacation, how do you make up for that? You just do it during slow time? Do you deny people their vacation time? Not hardly. So it's management is what it is. The table of equipment is called the TE. Okay, if you have 6 bulldozer drivers, how many bulldozers do you have? Well, they tell you. You get 3 bulldozers, okay. Then you have to figure out what those bulldozers can do. Are they going to be digging trash dump trips? Or are they going to make railroads? Are they going to make airports? What are they going to cutting tops off of mountains for helicopter landing zones? But it's known. There's not a lot of unknowns in this. The last is the TAM, the table of equipment of material. So you find out how many gas masks you're going to have, and how many sleeping bags you're going to have, and how they all have to be inventoried. Somebody's got to take charge of them. Somebody's got to count them. So it's a whole microcosm of the same type of management problems that you face in industry. Are you going to have pens advertised and give away, and are they going to be consolidated in a desk or a locker, or are we going to give them out to everybody, or then a cup on account? All those types of decisions. But you know your human resources needs, you know your equipment needs, and you know your material needs that you're going to have to do this job. Clean and fair. And what do you find yourself in? Are you in peacetime? Are you in war? I had the pleasure of commanding 357 Marines for 4 months in Vietnam. I didn't lose one. Not because we weren't engaged and doing things that were very dangerous, or that the enemy was not good shooters. It's just that we were awfully lucky. Got some holes poked in some folks, and some bloodied up, but no deaths. And being wounded seems to be a lot better than being dead. So it depends on your situation. You're going to find that here. Tempo of loans. You were asked, is this a busy time for you, or is this not a busy time for you? So the tempo of operations. The unit that's performing, when you're called up to do something, is that unit trained as a team? Are they ready to go? Have they bought into the leadership style that the leader brings to the party? Or are they still questioning what's going on? Not that that's bad, but it is a dynamic that you need to know about and understand. Are you ready to go? And then the leader himself. Is this one of those guys that's out here on the right-hand side of the fitness report page that's outstanding? Or is this one in combat that you'd rather get down there and be willing to have? That was a bad one. Be willing to have. Now you're looking at a guy who got from one commander, be glad to have. Well, that's not too bad. But the one I was looking for was particularly desire to have. So particularly desire, I got 5 of those. I got 1 to be glad to have. I still don't like that guy. I question his judgment. I really do. And I know why I got it, and I probably deserve it. And if I were marking an officer like myself in that situation, I probably would have evaluated myself in that same manner. And okay, problem solving. Another acronym, RAW. Marines go around yelling, "Hoorah!" Army guys that jump out of airplanes yell, "Leg!" I don't know whether they're going to break a leg or they have a straight leg or straight leg infantry. I never did understand the Army, but I did understand RAW. If you're having problems within your unit, you have to recognize those problems early on and admit to them. White's Electronics, I made a transition from marketing and finance on over to engineering, and I had a young lady who was ill-suited for the job. I didn't want her in that position. I should have terminated her employment or moved her to another position. But we worked together for 8 years. 8 long, hard years. Harder for me than you can imagine. And I finally ended up terminating her employment after 8 years. I was unwilling to call that shot, to make that tough moral judgment, even though I know it was right. I knew my heart of hearts, but I just figured that I could work with her, being the fantastic person that I was. I could overcome some of her difficulties. I would give her a new coaching plan and another one. And she's improving here, and it wasn't that bad this month. 8 years. And so I didn't do a very good job for her or with her, because she probably could have gone out and been just fine somewhere else, but not in that role, not that. So that's a trait here that I will now start talking about and beavering about that I should have done when I passed the last slide. And these are the traits. This is where JJ did tie buckle comes from. JJ stands for judgment and justice. Did, dependability, integrity, decisiveness. And in that example I gave you, I was not decisive at all. And we read a lot of books about people who just can't make decisions. Tie, the T stands for tact. Bad joke. Formation out there, maybe a platoon-sized unit of 45 people. And leader in front says, "All right, listen up. Those of you with mothers, take one step forward. Not so fast, O'Connell." That's supposed to cause great humor. You know? That's
Well, you heard that before. So
yeah. So anyway, that wasn't very tactful. So you have to learn to present information to people in a manner that they're ready and willing to accept it. I watch a lot of these British mystery movies. You know, when somebody's about ready to die and get killed, it's like, "Hello? You want to know who's out there?" "Well, it's the bad guy. Don't go out there." You know, yeah. Don't say hello. And then when they go to tell them, wife or the parent, the guy's been off, the gal's been off, they beat around the bush forever. Just tell her he's dead, you know. We know this already. Very seldom do I see tact distributed. The I is initiative. Got to have some initiative. I think we all know these words and what they mean, but there's a little explanation down there. And integrity rather than initiative. Initiative came out of that other one. Enthusiasm. If you don't have enthusiasm, it's a downer. You got to be kind of up for things. Be enthusiastic in your pitch. Buckle. That's what JJ did tie. JJ did tie buckle. Bearing doesn't translate too well in a civilian world or in management positions. I was talking to some people, early employees of Hewlett-Packard, and they said when David Packard walked into the room, you just knew he was that's David Packard. Oh, look, he's on, you know, the way he carried himself, the way he presented himself, and so bearing does have a place in management. The U stands for unselfishness. I had a hard time, I think, with unselfishness in the civilian world, the perks that come with executive management and those kinds of things. I didn't think the system was that fair. And we could show up 10 o'clock, 10:30, who cared? More managers, we do all this stuff. You know. Employees have to be on the line, punching that time clock, working their tails off, you know, for minimum wage and $8 an hour. But man, we're, whatever they called it, special people. I felt that was very selfish, and I didn't experience that in the service that much, although there were perks. I could go get my hair cut every week, and my hair almost gone, high and tight, and if I was in uniform, I was an officer, I could go ahead of the line because my job was more important. So you see similarities between both areas. But don't be selfish. Set an example for your troop. Treat people like you would like to be treated. You get along a lot better with that. Include them in the decision-making process. Too many times we just put it out there and let it run. This is it, this is the policy, this is this. And don't take the time to explain it and show them and tell them really what it's all about, what's going on. So it's tough to build a team like that. Again, if you're having problems, recognize it first step, analyze it. But don't analyze it forever. You know, too many PhDers there are great about analysis. And they can analyze until they become paralyzed. And if I just had just a little more data. Now I'm into big data now, and I still don't have the answer. Just at some point you're going to have to act. And that's the third step in RAW. You know, recognize, analyze, and then act on it. The process, find the reason that you're having this problem. After 8 years, it was my conclusion that this lady wanted my job, and she wanted my role, and she wanted the authority that I had as an engineering manager, but she lacked the technical competence. She did not have the skill level, she did not have the set, but she had the influence with the engineers. And so she had captured 2 of my engineers on a 5-person team, and it made it very difficult to have a cohesive engineer design team with the projects coming out on time. It wasn't impossible, but it just made it harder than it should. Get the facts about the problem. Stick to the facts when you're dealing with difficult situations and personality things. And then examine the cultural. A lot of things are different. You met my good friend here already and one lunch from Brazil. I'm sure that's different. I'm sure Ning and I spent, 30 years now, maybe, Ning, together? We're starting to learn each other about each other's culture. My son is married to a Japanese woman and lives in Nagoya, Japan. My grandchildren are what they call half, I call double. They're twice as good as any Japanese. I've got all American and all Japanese. I got double. I got the best of both worlds. But selling them on that sometimes at school and junior high and other times is a little bit different. But there are cultural influences on it, ethnic influences that affect us a lot, and you need to be aware of them. It's a big world that we live out there. If you're going to survive in an international business setting, international world, you got to be aware of those cultural differences. with your people. And then, like I say, if you can't solve the problem, you can't get the job done, tough enough. Okay, moving right on. Wrap up. Okay, I was very lucky in Vietnam. My first sergeant, John Macero, got promoted to the highest rank in enlisted ranks as a sergeant major. And then he went to Headquarters Marine Corps and was a senior enlisted individual at Headquarters Marine Corps. And I learned a lot from John. He was, as far as military bearing goes, he was the picture poster, 6'3", very bright fellow for his skill set and his rank. And he had a quiet spirit about him that could definitely get the job done. And I learned a lot from him as a very young 23-year-old captain trying to survive the war. He took care of me, and I tried to help him as much as I could and stay out of his way most of the time. I was transferred at one time to Argentia, Newfoundland, and I ran into a senior chief petty officer up there, helped running the base, and he was promoted and became senior chief petty officer of the Navy. So I had two that I personally knew and was influenced by, mentored by, if you will. And you don't always have to be mentored by someone senior to you. You can discover talent and leadership traits and skill sets of folks that are working for you as well. And they can train you and mentor you. And you can learn from them. And it is a process in leadership of learning what you think is good, again, perspective, half full or half empty, and developing your skill based upon those people that you've worked with. The Commandant, again, leadership training is where I met him. He went on to be the Commandant of the Marine Corps, a very inspired leader, good guy to be around, fun to be with. The two assistant commandants I worked directly for. I was a battalion commander for J.J. Wendt. He was a chemical engineer, had a master's degree in chemical engineering, and made 4 stars, became assistant commandant of the Marine Corps. One of the finest leaders that I've ever been around. Highest level of integrity. And his wife liked me a lot. She called me Smiling. So, you know, that must say something. You know, must be good. My Medal of Honor winners. I brought 2 books just to show you that I can read. This one is written by a recently deceased Medal of Honor winner that I was in Command and Staff College with. We had a very special class. It seemed our legislature wanted to have people sent to Command and Staff College, a high-level school, only if they were going to get promoted to the next highest rank. And so they selected out of our school 4 engineers. I made a 2% cut. I felt good about it. My very good friend was one of the other 4. The other 2 I had not worked with, I didn't know, except by reputation. And J.J. Vargas, another Congressional Medal of Honor winner, was there. His Medal of Honor was for Vietnam. Wes Fox was a Virginia boy, joined about 20 years old during Korea. And I'd like to read just to keep you either awake or asleep at this point, the first 2 pages of his book, and maybe you'll be interested enough after this. He was started out as a private in the Marine Corps. When I met him, he was a major. I was born to John and Delosa Lee Crouch Fox near Herndon, Virginia on 30 September 1931, the first of their 10 children. So a big family. My parents had their hands full with the start of the family. I speak of my parents like 2 families. Now I'm on the wrong page here already. Should mark that better. Here we go. So he sent to Korea. Searching the blackness forward in early morning hours, I concentrated on trying to see any movement or threat. There was no illumination. Everything was lost in the black. The words, "The Chinese are coming up the hill," were ringing in my ears. Where were the Chinese if we were under attack? Sounds that could be troop movement came through the darkness, but I was not sure of what I heard. Unable to place a direction on the sound, I considered it my imagination. PFC John Hall's Browning automatic rifle opened up close on my left. Hall mashed the trigger with no let-up. I knew that he was pressured because Hall was a good Browning automatic rifleman. They call it a bar. and normally fired in 3 burst rounds. Immediately other weapons and grenade blasts joined Hall's bar. Through the position was only 50 meters to my left. I could not see a thing. Over the scrubby grounds around Hall's position, I could see flashes of light from grenade explosions. As close as I was to Hall with no enemy threat against me, I considered the firing to be coming only from our line. I learned that Marines fire only when they have a target. In spite of all the firing and the draw to my immediate left, there was no target. There were no muzzle flashes amid the blackness of the scrub pines filling our positions. If enemy soldiers were not on our hill, my buddies were shooting at ghosts. Reality suddenly struck hard. Hall's BAR and most weapons ceased firing. Intensely searching the blackness forward, I was shocked by a voice close behind me. From my left rear and almost on top of me came loud, crisp orders in a foreign tongue. Every sense and nerve was instantly alerted. I realized the enemy was behind our line of defense. They were behind me, and I was next. I would explode a grenade on the ground by my hole. That might give me a chance to get out. Removing the grenade from my belt suspenders, I placed my middle finger on the ring and pulled. Nothing moved. To avoid accidental explosions would cost the division several Marines, we were directed to mash the cotter pin flat against the fuse handle. Now in the haste and the moment in the black of the night, I did not attempt to straighten the pin. I applied more force. The ring came away, but without the pin. I did not have to see it to know that the cotter pin had been separated, releasing the pull ring, but leaving the 2 halves of the pin in the fuse. Working by feel, I attempted to remove the 2 halves, but gave up because time was consuming. I had to move. Foreign commands were shouted all around me, with burp guns fired on a ridge by my shelter half. That's a tent. Taking my second and last grenade, I straightened the pin, pulled the ring. Everything worked, releasing the spoon that activated the fuse. I placed the grenade just outside my hole. I compressed myself as well as I could in that little hole and waited for the explosion. I failed to count off the 4 to 6 seconds between releasing the spoon and the explosion. To emphasize the eternity of seconds in a firefight, I thought that the grenade was a dud. It should have exploded. Enemy soldiers were talking all around me. Dud or not, I was going out anyway. An instant before I sprang, the grenade exploded. The timing could not have been any better. Full advantage of the shock effect of that explosive was mine. I came out of my hole so close behind the blast that I was part of it. No enemy soldiers were in my way or took me under fire in the blackness. Baker was not in his hole. Light from exploding ordnance helped determine that fact. Farm zone and forearm were also gone. I continued toward the higher knoll on the right position of our squad. Weapons fired, grenades explosion increased behind me. Halt! Who goes there? Came a challenge out of the darkness. Fox! I responded while moving forward. At that moment, a Chinese concussion grenade hit me in the chest, bounced off and exploded while airborne. It exploded within arm's length, and except for temporary hearing and night vision loss, I was not scratched. I felt invincible, like I was 10 feet tall. All squad members were now on the knoll. We set up across the ridge, making an L-shaped position. Riflemen farthest from the breakthrough manned their original positions, making the long part of the L. My fire team refused the line across the ridge, making the base of the I. Weapons fire and grenade explosions continued in and around my vacated position in John Hall's. The battalion's 81 mortar joined the fight. The tubes were popping in the valley close behind us for fire for effective missions. With no pressure against us, our weapons remained silent. What was the enemy's objective? As we lay quietly in the dark, I had time for thought. I had mentally moved to the events that had placed me in this precarious situation. Thoughts of my family and my home filled my mind. I wanted to fight my country's battle since child, and I remember my dad's concern for me when he learned of the uniform that I had chosen. Wes writes fairly well. He went on, got his degree, became an officer, and went back to Korea a second time. Spent 43 years in the Marine Corps. Just died out in Virginia. Before he died, he wrote a book describing his experience with jumping out of airplanes and testing new maneuverable squares. He made something like 1,400 jumps. Chute failed to open on 4 occasions. So he talks about, in that time of stress, how he needed to process through and figure out what to do in those kinds of situations. So thinking under pressure is part of that. C, encourage. The L in the trait, loyalty, goes both ways. The E is endurance, and you have endured a lot to get to this point in my talk. So I didn't have to dance too much. I did put some reference material here. I looked at that One Bold Move, another Marine, coincidentally. I didn't know that before I checked it out. Talks about leadership. He also talks about a management book that incorporates a lot of these same ideas for successful business managers. It's worth a checkup if you just want to take a look at it. These two books, so I'll just say Semper Fi and Engineers Up.
All right, thank you.
All right? How are we doing? Time. I didn't check the time.
All right. Well, thank you very much,
Okay.
Bill.
You bet.
You have given us a whole lot to think about. And so we will wrap things up in a moment, but I'd like to ask if anybody is willing, if there's something that you might take from this and use going forward in your business or in your life. So does anybody have something they might take away, they might want to share?
I really like the J.J. tie buckle. I like this a lot because I'm from a military background, and being in Oregon, I've been in management roles everywhere I've been. Now I'm a business owner, and I have to translate my vision, my methodologies to other my agents and other insurance agents I do business with. So I really liked it. It's going to be hanging on my wall. I'll make it a little bigger so I can read it, but yeah. But no, I really appreciate the message. I've been a few medal honors myself, and I spent time with Admiral Hacker when I was in the Navy, and he talked about leadership, and it was, and a lot of the business stuff I've learned, well, a lot of the military stuff I had translated to my job at HP. I would like to do it 15 minutes till when we started. That didn't go well. But they adapted when it came. They started showing 15 minutes early, so it's just implementing some of those tactics and strategies with my team. It's really good.
Does anybody else have something like to share, or they feel they'll be able to use it?
I will add one more thing though. When you said making decisions in that stressful situation, being in the Persian Gulf 3 times, I've seen ships get attacked. Fired most of myself in combat, and everything is slow. It slowed down, and you're right. It was like, I have to do this now, or everybody's going to die. And so, when you're processing those critical situations, for me, I breathe. Okay, this is happening. What next? And so, with business, with life, with my children, watching one of my kids get hurt, just remain calm, focus on your training, use your training, and move forward. So it's really good. Thank you very much for reminding me a lot of things I've learned.
David Letterman had an interview with Barack Obama for his first show, and he asked him some of the differences now that he's no longer sitting president. And one of the things that Barack says is that, in job as president, everything had to be done immediately or people died. It was just a constant stress. And this agent called about a book deal, and he said, yeah, I'll be ready tomorrow. And he said, oh, no, it'll take at least 2 weeks to set it up. He said, that's the difference.
Yeah.
And that is true.
Yeah.
Did one of those letters stick out to everybody? For me, it was decisiveness. That's a piece I need to work on and figure out better. Anyone else have one of those words that stood out, that's something you can do, take some action with?
I think the whole thing for me. In my starting a new business with great business partners, every one of these apply every day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not. I can't pick just one. I have to acknowledge that each of these things apply. When we're ready.
I like the phrase firm, fair, and sensitive. I'm gonna grasp onto that. I appreciate that when I'm in situations that are the firm, like what is expected of you, or what you want others to do. So if everybody knows that, if everybody has that same knowledge, that should make it fair, right? Because everybody should be on the same page then. So then if somebody varies something and they don't do as they're supposed to do, you need to be sensitive maybe as to, okay, what's going on with you that caused you to do this or whatever, but you're still going to come back around to you need to do what you're supposed to do. I think there's a lot of applications in life for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would like to add something. I've had employees that you haven't let go and you should let go of. And that is a challenge sometimes because we a lot of times like the people that work for us. They may not be a great fit, but we really like them and we feel like we're going to be mean or devastating to their life, and in the end it's something that's better, like a band-aid just ripped off. So
I would say here, integrity. Integrity used to be people live by reputation, but now in this fast-moving world, people are changing places, you don't meet people on the internet, whatever, just all those change, and the people can just rebuild themselves from here and there. And sometimes this thing, reputation, integrity, get the kind of lost in there, but it's important if you want to be true to yourself. You have to keep the integrity. Eventually, it's going to show your impact. It's not like it really pay off or something, but to yourself, integrity. It's always going to be there. So.
May I ask you a question? So how have you had to change or adapt your practices and teachings with this immediate response world? Everything's on the Facebook, everything's on Instagram. It's that instant gratification that most of my clients have a hard time with. I specialize in senior solutions, so Medicare and things like that. So a lot of my clients are like, why is this happening? And so how have you trained people to deal or adjust to that imperative?
Yeah, I've used the four-step process and get down to the bottom of it, and I've had to toughen up mentally because I can't accept it. I'm very, very impatient. You know, I want to do everything right now. Get that one out because I know something's coming right behind it. I got to get that done. But that's just not the reality. The civilian world doesn't work like that. You know, it's not mañana, but it's just not seen as important. I mean, almost in every board meeting, every task that we have, it just seems to go on and on and on. And we like to improve the appearance of this office. Okay, well, let's get a bucket of paint and paint it. You know, yeah, I've assigned that to John, and John's looking at it, and we've got to choose colors. And, I mean, move down on and on and on. I just like to get the paint, and a lot of times I do. I just do it myself rather than to try to handle a team. But I've had to toughen out. Just realize that one fellow was called to active duty for the Gulf War and came back, and I had to let him go. He couldn't handle it. Nothing's important. This is not important. Well, it's important. That's we're working prototypes. I'm working for a medical research company. They got to have the, I got to get that out there. Well, that's not important. You know, people were dying where I was. Well, yeah, I understand that, but it didn't work. So.
One of the things I've found over my career is that things go off the rails some of the time due to improper communication.
Absolutely.
Or understanding. In the Marine Corps, communication is critical, but in business, I found that you can communicate, but sometimes it boils down into meetings discussing understanding of the communication, which can be good and bad. What on communication, I don't see that listed as one of the things. How would that interact with this?
Yeah, it is in the readings and the rest of the stuff. It's stressed as being make sure that the task that they're given is understood. And then of course measuring that task. Metrics are really important for everything I think that we do in every job. How do you know you're getting the job done? What is the goal? What is going to be the measure? How is he going to get the shooting badge? If you don't establish that as a goal. I would like this task done by Thursday, or we need to get this stuff done. The deadline for the project, the submission for the bid. We want to write.
Well, I found what's changed since I first started used to be that, and then the question is, well, why? Mm-hmm. They want to know why. Mm-hmm. Everything's why. Mm-hmm. So I just said we have a deadline.
Right, because I said so.
You don't want to say that, but
exactly.
Sometimes I would never, when I started, say, well, why, unless I really didn't understand, because it was a deadline, fine, we'll do that. But now I find, why is that? And if you explain it, no problem. But it's like if you don't, you go back and, well, I didn't really understand that. You know, and again, it's that communications thing, which is, I don't know if that's from the phone issue and they're not really paying attention or whatever. But that's the one thing I've seen that I'm very cognizant of now is communicating.
You know, one of the things that along those lines about communication, I recently did a talk on being present. I was at a meeting with a bunch of other business people, and they're complaining to me and their director about the performance. And I asked them, I said, are you present when you come in? You paid your money to be a part of this. Are you present? And there was 4 people in the room just doing this thing. And I said, Aaron, are you present? That's why they asked why, because they're not present.
I would disagree with that. I would disagree with that.
This particular person. No, this particular
Right.
person.
But I will say that we do live in an instant gratification. We're live on Facebook right now. People are responding and they're watching and they're looking, right? We are in an information society that things come at us very quickly, and we have to pick up our pace to keep up with that. Now, we're also in a transparent community now. We have video cameras on everything. We understand everything. We have Wikipedia. We have Google. People like to understand why they're doing things. We get to understand. We aren't just told what to do anymore. It's just a change.
It's a shift. It is. It's a shift.
I think it's positive. I disagree with the negative part. I think it's positive.
We'll disagree.
And
No, I love her. She's going to be one.
And I haven't been in the military, but I've worked for the government, and I find the government is incredibly slow.
Yes.
I get stuff done faster than any government agency I've ever been part of. And I'm in an instant gratification where people are texting me now going, I need that now.
Right.
And they have a hard time having me say in a few minutes. So the perspectives are interesting, right? And it depends on the line of work you're in and the level of what kind of work you're doing. So I would be open to the instant gratification, and I would be open to people wanting to understand.
I think that's my work is different than yours. I mean, I'm dealing with seniors, and you're not all the time.
I deal with lots of seniors.
But not all the time. I mean, every day for me. And so some are technologically savvy.
I've done adult foster care. I've dealt with lots of seniors. Now the difference between seniors is you can read their signature.
Right.
And they like personal. They like personal because that's what they're used to, and that's what they were conditioned for. When we're dealing with millennials or we're dealing with different generations, they've just been brought up differently. Things have always been faster. And if you look at the rate of technology and how fast it's moving, we have to get up early, period. You have to get up early. And if you're not willing to do that, then just retire. It's okay, no judgment.
Following up on this speed of everything, this is where the table of organization, table of equipment, and table of authorized material kind of helps. Because if you have to move very fast, you have to be organized. Is the equipment you have, is the internet connection? Are you helping your employees enough to really give them the tools that they can meet their expectations as well as do the job they're looking for? And that breakout of just those 3 things kind of helped me, you have to pull them all together to be an effective manager, but you have to separate the 3 out in a practical sense. And if you can organize those 3 together before employees are engaged, then things go a little smoother.
I think we're going to wrap it up because this has been, it's gone a little longer than we thought, so you're very welcome to continue to discuss offline. But we wanted to say, thank you to everybody and your feedback and your time. And we do have some more things coming up, and actually I am going to be talking to you guys in a couple weeks and kind of taking a lot of what Bill has said and really talking about how do you build that into the way you do things and how you build leadership into your processes, into your daily workflow. Leaders often kind of, everything else has systems, and sometimes we fail to build leadership systems within our business. So that's one of the things I'm going to talk about. And then after that, in another couple of weeks, we have Tammy Brannon talking about rebuilding self-esteem through failure. And I haven't seen all what she's going to talk about there, but it sounds pretty interesting. And failure is certainly a part of everything now. And in the startup community, failure is almost wanted. So it's kind of an interesting kind of perspective. Build fast, fail fast, and do something again, So So thank you. Is there anything more you'd like to say, Drew, of this?
Nope. Yeah, thank you. It's a nice full room. I'm excited about everybody being here and the series that we're starting, alternating between here and Corvallis. Kind of get some variety, some broader base. So I'm glad to see some people here that might not have made it all the way over to Corvallis, but hopefully people will travel well back and forth, and we'll just keep building and growing. It's been a great conversation. Hopefully we're all encouraged in just how we can lift our businesses a little bit higher with some specific actions. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's it.